is CW Iowa Live.
How about this, folks? On the heels of the Masters tournament finishing up yesterday, back in 1960, Professional Golfers Association, better known as the PGA, is founded in New York City. So they said, okay, we are officially an organization. They struck the gavel. Let's go play golf. So the first tournament was held on this day as well. How about that? A long time ago.
Hitting a ball with a stick for a long time.
It is 9:29 right now. Welcome back to CW Iowa Live. Lou and Jackie here, along with our good friend, the privacy professor, Rebecca Harold, is joining us in studio. And boy, oh boy, we have a lot of things to talk about this morning.
Oh, we do. There's so much going on.
Big news over the weekend that you want to make sure we touch on first and foremost.
Exactly. I've had a lot of people ask me about this. So I got up on Saturday morning and I had heard that down in Texas and Dallas, the city of Dallas, they have 156 sirens that go off, you know, when there's an emergency. Maybe there's a tornado coming, maybe there's a bomb threat. Well, hackers got into the alarm systems and they set off all 156 sirens from 11:40 p.m. until 1:20 a.m.
Oh, that'd be annoying.
An hour and a half. All 156 sirens, they set off 60 times, each of them.
Wow.
It just kept going and going.
And then they shut off and then they turn on again?
Yeah, which tells me that, you know, those hackers were in there and
just playing.
Well, or they were trying to find maybe where some weaknesses were in the system, or they might have been creating a diversion while they were doing other things in other parts of the network. So I had a lot of people ask me, they said, well, how did they do this? And who do you think did it? Well, I think there's really 4 good possibilities. I mean, I've heard some of the folks already talking about this saying, oh, it's probably an insider. And that's one good possibility.
Like a disgruntled worker of some sort?
A disgruntled worker or a former worker, and they might have had intimate knowledge of how the network worked, especially how the alarms went off and how to set them off. Also, another type of insider are those folks you hire, you contract to do work for you, right?
Okay.
And I've seen anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2 of all security incidents are often started from contracted workers, because oftentimes those companies that do business for other businesses don't have the same level of security within their systems. Yeah, so they are a huge vulnerability. So if they had a way to get in through their system and get into those sirens and the warning signals, that's a good possibility too.
Wow, because I feel like only so many people would have, you know, access to something like that. So I feel like it would be a small amount of people that they would be able to check out in a circumstance, but maybe not. Maybe someone else could hack on in.
Well, that, or just like you said too, think about when people leave an organization. What I found through a lot of the businesses that I help is they don't have good offboarding security controls, meaning oftentimes when somebody leaves a company, they don't shut off all their access into the networks, because now there are so many different ways to get into a network. Oftentimes if they leave one door open, somebody who used to work there might have gotten in and they said, well, let's wreak some havoc, especially, you know, after people have gotten home, after being at the bars, and, you know, let's set off the sirens and see what kind of damage we can do. Wow. But also something that a lot of people don't think about is they could have had someone who knew what type of system they were using. That's another thing that's a really good possibility, because if the Texas warning sirens were using a well-known system and it was documented out there, somebody could have been thinking, well, let's see what we can do here, because we know those same type of systems are located in other cities as well. And if we know we can get in and do all sorts of damage in Dallas, maybe we could get into New York City or Chicago if
whoever has that same system.
If they have the same system.
Well, so it's also an unfortunate thing. It's kind of a crying wolf, you know. If it goes off again, are people going to be like, oh, maybe someone's messing with the system, as opposed to reacting to what those sirens actually mean?
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. After you set it off, false alarm enough, why, you know, you start thinking, oh, they're messing with the
once or
system
twice,
again.
it's one thing, but 61
Right.
times is a different story.
Right.
That's true.
Well, and one other possibility is that they have bad disposal, because I found organizations throw away their user manuals, their technology manuals. They'll throw them in the back in the alleyway dumpster. Somebody will come along, and this has happened a lot of times. They'll find those and they're like, oh, look at this. Here's how we can get into the system, and we can really turn them on and turn them off. The fact that they did this for over an hour and a half, 60 times each, tells me that they weren't prepared. They did not have the planning in place that
Right.
they needed to.
In case something like this happens.
Yeah, so I think it's a wake-up call, not just for those in Dallas, but all city types of government systems, to look at that and say, we better do a risk assessment to make sure that something like that cannot happen here, because
Right.
organizations don't do enough risk assessments either, and that's basically where you go through and you find where your weaknesses and vulnerabilities are. So hopefully all of the city administrators throughout the country will see that and say, we need to do a risk
Now,
assessment.
is that something that your company can help them do?
Yeah, definitely.
Because people always wondered, like, what does your company do? You talk
Yes.
about your business, but that would be something that would be beneficial.
Oh, definitely. In fact, I've done hundreds of risk assessments for organizations, and that's what my Symbis business was. I created a way to actually automate a lot of the things that you do over and over again in risk assessments to make it much easier and more cost effective to do. So that's one of the big things in my
Wanna
Symbis
keep that
business.
in mind, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, something else that's come down in the headlines, Trump
Yes.
repealed something that Obama had in place, and it has
Yes.
to do with our information and security.
Yes, our privacy. So basically last year, there was put into place the FCC Privacy Rule. Before that time, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, they kind of govern all of your telephones and telecommunications. Well, through this rule, they declared that internet access through your internet service providers should be considered as a utility, similar to any other type of utility. Every person deserves to be able to access the internet because it's become so important and we become so reliant.
Right.
Well, through this rule, it basically said a couple of big things. Number one, that all ISPs, internet service providers, have to have a formal security and privacy program in place. There had been no requirement for that to this point, which is really
It's hard to
sad.
believe.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. I mean, in healthcare, we have regulations saying you have to have security program. In financial space, in education space, it just makes sense. So that was one of the requirements. The other requirements was that they could not just sell the data that they have about their customers
Right.
to anybody, because that's something where that's another revenue path for a lot of internet service providers. They sell data about what their customers are doing online. And that was a huge concern from a privacy standpoint. So a lot of the folks in Congress said, oh, well, this is going to be too cumbersome for all the ISPs to actually have a formal security program in place, and to tell them that they have to ask for opt-in before they sell people's personal information and activity logs to others. And so that's why they repealed it. Now, it had not gone into effect yet. It was scheduled to go into effect this year.
Okay.
But now it's kind of wide open. So now your ISPs basically are only going to be held to their own posted privacy policies that they have on their website. Now, when was the last time you looked at your posted privacy policy for your
How
ISP?
about never?
Exactly.
Never.
Well, if you
I
go
didn't even know they had one.
yeah, well, yeah, and oftentimes it's a lack of privacy policy. I went out and looked at a couple of ISPs that I know serve central Iowa, and in their privacy notice, it just basically said, we will not do anything with your personal information that is not prohibited by law. Well, think about it. Now there's no law that
Now there's no
says-
law that prohibits anything.
Exactly. So it really
Wow.
is a bad thing that they decided to not do that. A lot of the folks in Congress say, oh, well, it's a conflict with the FTC Act. But it's not, because there was a judge that ruled last year that the FTC does not have jurisdiction over ISPs. So the FTC Act, number one, wouldn't apply. And number two, the FTC Act only really says if you make a promise in your privacy policy, then you must actually do what you've promised to your
So
customers.
who's going to be the biggest benefactor from this?
The ISPs.
The ISP is.
And because now, just think, we have more data being created from your smartphones, from your laptops, from your tablets, from all those smart devices. This is going beyond just having, a lot of people say, oh, we'll get a VPN, a personal VPN, and that will make it
Now,
so.
what is that for people that don't know?
A virtual private network.
Okay.
So a lot of businesses have VPNs or virtual private networks, and you could get personal ones. Be careful, because as soon as this FCC rule was done away with or repealed, a lot of hackers and criminals came out with their own personal VPNs, which are really malware to get your information. But anyway, even if you have that, that might not be able to show them the website you go to, but it will still tell them when you were online, where you were online from, the type of device you were using, and so on.
And that's all sellable. That's all information that people want.
Oh yeah, because the marketers would love to know, Lou, that they'd love to see what sites are you going to, because if you're going to a lot of racing car sites, then they can know to send a lot of ads to you about racing car information.
Right.
So, that's very valuable. But just think about all of that data that's also valuable to investigators, to police investigations, in addition to researchers and so on, and even in court cases. That kind of data has been used in different lawsuits and in divorce cases as well. Yeah, because it can show where people are at any point in time and what they're doing. So it can negate what someone is claiming that they did. They can say, nope, we can see you were right over here because
Always
you're
be
online.
careful where you log in. Just remember that, no matter what device.
Yes.
That's almost frightening, isn't it?
Well, there's a lot to talk about, as we always have with you, Rebecca. If people want more information and just want to stay on top of the latest news, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, they can go out to my website at Simbas360.com. They can ask me questions through the question mark there on the site. And then also I'm on Twitter, and I'm at Privacy Prof on Twitter. So I try to put out good tips and information on Twitter at least a few times each day.
Always has something fun to talk about and something fun to take a look at, too. So just check that out, Privacy Prof on Twitter. It's a really good site. So perfect.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Great job as always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.